It's a lot tougher governing than it is running for office. It's a lot tougher.
He's been doing some bullshit to state employees. Always got.
So should we use the term Fox News, or should we use the term faux news?
Is this tomato or tomato?
Do you say potato? I say potato. Tomato, tomato. Okay. We're not going to call the show off. Okay. Oh, hi. This is David Stevenson, Progressive Soup. With me, I have our esteemed guest, Al Robinson, who's the author of Hat City Blog for over 5 years now.
5 years. It's going to be 6 years in a few days. Well, by the time this is taped. By the time this is broadcast, it's being taped. By the time this is broadcast, it will be 6 years.
Wednesday night, the 20, whatever Wednesday night is.
Well, I started on July 19th, 2005.
So you will have passed your 6th anniversary.
Yeah, 6 years ago and after the Mark Bout.
We should have had cake instead of soup, shouldn't we have?
Yeah. Hey.
Should.
What are you going to do?
All right. Well, at any rate, tonight we're going to talk about propaganda. And we all know about propaganda. It's a fun thing to talk about. We spent many, many years in the Cold War talking about communist propaganda, and that's how we all, as Americans generally, came to understand what propaganda is. And here's a little different take on propaganda. This is an article that I have here that says, starts off 14 propaganda techniques Fox News, quote unquote, uses to brainwash Americans. That's another term we heard a lot in the Cold War, brainwash. I don't know how they do that, whether you take soap and squirt soapy water in one ear and wait till it comes out the other ear. At any rate, so it starts off. There is nothing more sacred to the maintenance of democracy than a free press. Agreed?
Absolutely.
This man is absolute proof of that.
Yep, absolutely.
Access to comprehensive, accurate, and quality information is essential to the manifestation of Socratic citizenship. Those you have to study Socrates to understand that. The society characterized by a civically engaged, well-informed, and socially invested populace. Thus, to the degree that access to quality information is willfully or unintentionally obstructed, democracy itself is degraded. In other words, lying hurts us all. Saying things that are not true is bad. It is ironic that in the era of 24-hour cable news networks and reality programming, which probably all of you are watching right now instead of the show, the news-to-fluff ratio and overall veracity of information has declined precipitously. Take the fact Americans now spend an average of about 50 hours a week using various forms of media, while at the same time cultural literacy level hovers just above the gutter. Not only does mainstream media now tolerate gross misrepresentation of facts and history by public figures, highlighted most recently by Sarah Palin's ludicrous depiction of Paul Revere's ride, but many media actually legitimize these displays. Pause for a moment and ask yourself what it means that the world's largest, most profitable, and most popular news channel passes off as fact every whim, impulse, and outrageously incompetent analysis of its so-called reporters. Moving on down. 14 ways that media, we'll say media because we want you to observe every media outlet and ask the same questions evenly and fair-handedly of all the media outlets. Not just Fox, we want you to look at CNN, MSNBC, all of the news outlets, including Hat City Blog.
All right, that's fine.
And ask yourself these questions about these things that are done in order to pass lies off as truth. Okay, number one, panic mongering. This goes one step beyond simple fear mongering. With panic mongering, there is never a break from the fear. The idea is to terrify and terrorize the audience during every waking moment. From Muslims to swine flu to recession to homosexuals to immigrants to the rapture itself.
Now let's use that's a great example.
Okay.
That's
let's talk
perfect
about fear mongering.
Let's go back to
panic mongering.
Since it's 2011, let's go back to 2010.
Okay.
When the topic of the moment back then was the healthcare debate, and as you can recall, certain news organizations such as Fox News and conservative mouthpieces kept going on and on and on with the fear-mongering in terms of they're coming after your Medicare, death panels.
Do I hear death panels?
Death panels.
And it wasn't just Fox.
No, it wasn't just Fox. But
all the liberal, according to some, liberal news outlets allowed that term to be used.
Well, it's this terminology, just like we're hearing right now, Obamacare.
Yeah.
You know, those are just catchphrases and stuff. But the death panel lie, which was proven to be a lie by several
everybody
nonpartisan groups.
Yeah, everybody looked at it rationally. Yeah.
You know, there's no doctors are not going to be determining how you die.
Well,
they're not going to try to kill you off.
I'll disagree with you on a little bit because there are death panels. There were death panels before the word death panel became popular. They're called HMOs, and they make life or death decisions. They have death panels. All of the HMOs make life or death decisions based on profit.
Well, if you want to talk about, panels. Hey, we're not going to give you that additional MRI. We're not going to give you that additional testing for screening for breast cancer and things of that nature. Gotcha.
There you go.
But this whole drumbeat of death panels, or what was another good one? Giving free health care to undocumented immigrants. That type of stuff, or the great one, which is so ironic now because Republicans right now want to do this to our certain entitlements. We heard that Obama's coming after your Medicare.
Yeah.
What was $500 million or some figure?
Which essentially was money that was corrupt money that was siphoned off of Medicare illegally.
Well, now that the Republicans are talking about, well, we got to go after entitlement programs. We got to raise the Medicare, the age of Social Security. You know, we want to bring certain cuts to Medicare. They want to do the same type of stuff that they were accusing Democrats of wanting to do.
They tried it in 2005. They tried it in 2005 under George Bush, and it didn't go over very well.
And when the Democrats now are saying, "Hey, wait a second, look at the hypocrisy. The Republicans want to come after your Medicare," and they're like, and the Republicans are, "Well, wait a second, let's have a do-over. Let's go have a clean slate."
Yeah.
So again, it's the propaganda that's being spewed by organizations such as News Corp, Fox News, New York Post.
And then unfortunately parroted by news organizations that are ridiculed as being liberal. They're still guilty of parroting the types of things that are generated on Fox.
Not to the degree in which Fox News will do what they do.
But they do parrot it.
Well, not to the degree that Fox News does.
Yeah.
Because you'll get that drumbeat all day of death panels all day from let's say 9 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and at 7 o'clock, Glenn Beck's giving it to you on a grandioso scale when he was on from 7 to whatever, and then O'Reilly's giving it to you, then Hannity's giving it to you, and so it's just a repeat of lies, and if you repeat a lie enough times, it becomes a truth. So
now you're right about the phrases and repeating the phrases, and it was very interesting. And if you watch and listen for phrases to show up, like death panels. Like they're going to kill your grandma, things like that. They always show up on Fox News first, and they don't just show up on one show and then everybody else on Fox News eventually catches on to it. They show up across the board. They'll all say it almost in chorus to one another, and then immediately the Republican Party picks up on it, and it all comes from marketing. They're
That's all.
marketing.
It's just marketing. I can't remember the guy. David Frum, I think maybe it's his name.
David Frum's one of them.
They're very good in using catchwords with target groups or focus groups to see how it works out.
Yeah,
that's where you get the words like insurgents or freedom fighters, those type
freedom
of
fries.
Freedom fries. Now, all that terminology is all worked out way beforehand.
Yeah.
To see how it works, that's where you get the Obamacare from.
Yeah,
just
because to say healthcare reform, that doesn't have any cachet to it. That sounds good. No, but if we say Obamacare,
which means linking Obama with the healthcare reform,
it's
which
all on
they
him.
don't like, and
nobody else.
So it's
all
just
on him. Yep.
That's what they do, and again, back to the whole propaganda and spinning this lie. The problem is organizations such as Fox get away with this because the other organizations are not doing a good enough job saying, hey, wait a second, this is wrong. They're more interested in ratings. Ratings means more advertising.
Yeah.
More advertising means more revenue for your product.
Now, I grew up a long time ago. I'm a little older than you, but I grew up back when you had really essentially three networks, CBS, ABC, and NBC, three major networks you had. In New York, we were blessed with Channel 5, Channel 9, Channel 11, and the public television, Channel 13. So we had a huge variety of networks.
You also had New York 1, which is another great station.
But back then, news was what they call a loss leader. If you had a good, respectable news show, people generally, because they didn't have the remote control, they had to walk to the television to change the channels. Could you imagine? And the little picture tube was about this big. But people, if they tuned into the CBS News, generally they'd stick around for the rest of the broadcast of that evening, all the way till 11 o'clock when whatever came on at 11 o'clock, and then the national anthem, and everybody went to bed back in those days.
Well, there's also different things. There's a lot of other factors that happened back then that you don't have now. You had the old point counterpoint, where you nowadays, because of Ronald Reagan, he eliminated that, so you can have a conservative outlet to discuss conservative media constantly without a counterpoint forced on by the government.
There's no guarantee of an opportunity for people, different viewpoints to respond.
And also of deregulation.
The fairness doctrine.
The fairness doctrine.
Which Reagan, people ascribe that to Ronald Reagan, and it being perhaps the worst travesty he vested upon the United States of America and American people was eliminating the fairness doctrine.
Well, we can have a debate on.
We can talk about a lot of
travesty that Ronald Reagan has done.
We can talk about the huge deficits.
We can talk about a lot of people
we're still paying for.
We talk about a lot of people who died of AIDS that can be linked right back to Ronald Reagan for him not doing the right thing when he should have done.
Yeah.
But I want to change subjects here, but
okay, go ahead.
What has really happened here with media in general is that news organizations have been able to gobble up other news organizations from the same market because of the deregulation that's been done upon the media, which has allowed an organization such as News Corp to walk in and take Fox 5, the New York Post, Fox News.
Yeah. Rupert Murdoch owns an incredible array of stations.
Incredible amount of
so everything reflects him. Likewise, General Electric owns NBC, MSNBC, owns a whole variety of media outlets. Disney owns a wide variety of media outlets, and it ain't the Disney that we grew up with. This is a very different Disney.
And also, on the radio side, you have Affinity Broadcasting, which has taken over. You can turn on your radio in New York, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 7 channels are all owned by one corporation. So you can be listening to, let's say, WFAN, and you can listen to, let's say, maybe K-Rock or CBS Radio. It's all owned by the same conglomerate. So
therefore, one point of view.
Not only one point of, maybe not necessarily one point of view, but the guy pulling the strings owns everything out there.
So if he wants to stick in a few political plays along with the sports or the music or whatever, it's up to the one corporation.
Or more importantly, that one organization can drive the news cycle, and that becomes very dangerous.
Do I hear create news?
Because they determine what is news
Do I hear
and what is not news.
Create news?
Well, this goes back
like
to
the little kid in the balloon that everybody seemed to love watching for about 6 hours one day, and it turns out the kid was in his closet hiding, but all they showed on all the news stations for that entire day was the possibility that there's some kid up in a weather balloon. And of course, in the meanwhile, they avoided any serious news stories.
Well, or the Casey Anthony trial that is just engulps everything, and we're talking about Casey Anthony when Medicare is under attack, or we have a situation where we might go into default. This government might go into default.
But who cares about that? I mean, let's hear about Casey Anthony.
Yeah.
What's the word? What's the word on the street about Casey Anthony anyway?
I have no idea, and I don't care.
Oh, okay.
It's just that's driving the cycle, and that's driving the cycle not because it's newsworthy. It's because it gets ratings, and ratings again equals more advertising. That means profit. Yeah. So that goes back to your whole first point. That's where your first point that came up. Yeah. It's profit driven. It's not about news. It's about making a buck. And again, it goes back to your first point. You tell a lie enough times for the fear and all that stuff. Fear equals ratings.
Yeah.
It equals ratings. You get people alert and in a state of panic, and they keep coming back to
now. You remember back? Stuff. I'm going to say it's within the last 10 years that CNN came up with a very clever ploy. Breaking news story. And it might have been the most mundane, humdrum, non-newsworthy incident that you ever heard of. But they had this very clever bit of music and breaking news.
Well,
and people would automatically, oh my God, breaking news, it's got to be important.
Well, again, that CNN was copying off again with, that originally came from Fox News with the terror alert.
Yeah.
And
frighten people and they'll listen.
Frighten people and they'll listen. They'll be into a state of excitement. That was definitely done a lot during the term of George Bush. Oh. That was done all the time. In fact, there's still questions in which, when John Kerry was catching up on George Bush in terms of during the campaign, suddenly you get some type of terror alert that was supposed to scare people and bring. It's craziness.
Yeah. The terror alerts, the magic color codes.
Right.
Oh my goodness, yes. And what happened right before the 2004 election?
We had terror.
We had terror
alert. We had a videotape from Osama bin Laden.
Yep.
But
those things couldn't have been done intentionally to frighten people to vote for the candidate that was being purveyed as the one that'll keep you safe.
Well, again, it's just somebody taught me one day said ignorance begets monsters.
Yeah.
And you need to educate yourself and on what's going on in the world. Just not take somebody's word, such as Fox News or CNN or any media outlet, including myself. But again, your first point is very well. It's well taken. It's just the fear mongering, and if you look back on the past of media outlets, you can just see this happening over and over and over again, and you miss out on a lot of stuff that is really of significance.
It sounds like you're suggesting that people listen to various points of view from various sources, digest it, and then draw your own conclusions.
Well, I think now,
based on your brain, your ability to think.
Well, unlike the pre-internet age, at least now we live in a society where you don't have to go to the big three networks to just get your information.
Yeah.
Or more importantly, you don't have to watch TV at all to get your information. And I would even argue that a lot of people are not really watching TV that much anymore. Mobile devices are definitely, in my opinion, the wave of the future. Yeah. And you can get your information from a variety of sources on the internet, and you can search for yourself whether or not somebody's telling you the truth or not by going right to the source.
Yes, critique what you're hearing. Critique what you're hearing. No matter who's telling you, critique it. Fact check, double check, triple check, digest, think about. Don't go into the panic mode and just assume that what anyone tells you is absolutely truth. Everyone has a point of view. Everyone. We all do. We all have an agenda. And that's why we as thinking, rational human beings, not driven by fear, hopefully, need to critique what we hear and digest and think about, and that'll lead us probably a little closer to the truth.
Right. Well, on a local level, you have a big media outlet here called the News Times, and
I've heard of that.
yeah, and although, and I have to admit, in full disclosure, I'm a blogger for the Hearst newspaper, which is the News Times, as well as a lot of other papers.
So you
like
get
Connecticut
paid. You
Post.
get paid a pittance for that.
Well, no, I don't get paid for it, but I do blog for their paper, but I have nothing to do with the operations and the content of the News Times.
So they tolerate your point of view, which is obviously a little different than the folks that are in charge of the News Times.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. It's a big difference. Like, for instance, there's a certain topic going on right now in which, the city council wants to go and create a dog park in the city of Danbury at a certain park, and they're saying that, well, there's an ad hoc committee that was done, and there's a report in the News Times that was done on this ad hoc committee and the progress of this dog park.
Yeah.
Well, the reporter that wrote on this ad hoc committee meeting never went to the ad hoc committee meeting. He just took he made a couple of phone calls, got a couple of quotes, and just put something together.
So he didn't actually view what was said himself?
He didn't attend the meetings. So,
how do you sift through a bunch of facts from different sources and make any kind of judgment about what's being told to you that's the truth if you're not actually there as a reporter?
That's another one of these. That's another one of the problems with these media outlets, which we can connect this. We're connecting the dots between the News Times and these other outlets.
Yeah.
You have a reporter whose responsibility is to report the news. You can only report the news if you're witnessing the news for yourself.
Yeah.
And what reporters are doing nowadays, they're getting on the phone, making a couple of phone calls, getting a couple of quotes, and putting together a story. Well, if you're getting a couple of quotes from sources, the sources, of course, are spinning what they say because it's within their best interest.
Now, the guy at the next table, actually, not to cut you off, but the guy at the next table says that he's heard enough about Fox. He wants us to deviate a little bit and talk about the newer news outlets that we have coming into our lives. Patch, Town Hall, things of that nature.
Well,
what's your take on those?
Let's to continue on this. We'll link this together.
Okay, good.
An organization such as the Patch, or an organization, such as maybe myself. They're trying to do this in a different way. They're actually trying to attend these meetings and actually report about what's being said at these meetings, and getting a variety of point of view. Which, for instance, in myself, I'll definitely give you my opinion on how I feel about this situation.
And people recognize its opinion because hopefully people can separate
there's
fact
a
from
distinct
opinion.
difference when you read my stuff.
They can recognize that when you say something, that you're adding a coloration into it that's your own opinion.
Right.
And as long as you're honest about that, that's pretty much okay.
You've known me for a long time. I've been very honest in what I say.
Yeah.
And the unique thing about what I do is I'll give you my point of view, but I'll also give you the video of the entire meeting, so you can judge this for yourself. And that's a big difference.
So people can fact check what you're saying and maybe be at somewhere between 0 and 100% in agreement with you.
Right, and that's and I think in terms of local media, that's very important. We should not be allowed to just have a reporter call up a couple of people, get a couple of quotes, and just put an article together right from their desk.
Especially if they get some nice, juicy quotes, which they always seem to like.
In the case of, let's say, our mayor, when he goes around and says that, well, the city of Danbury had nothing to do with the raids at Kennedy Park. And he's not challenged on this stuff, or, we had nothing to do with the firefighter, debacle, or things of that nature.
Didn't cost us anything. We won.
Right. It's just... These things are just outrageous.
Didn't it cost the citizens of Danbury some money?
It cost a lot of money. We definitely do a different show on all that entire topic. But the problem is, again, whether it's Fox News or it's the News Times, it is very important for readers to take what's being said by these outlets with a grain of salt and research this stuff on your own. Because again, ignorance begets monsters. And if you don't read up and learn about what's going on in your area or in your country or your state, you are at a disadvantage, and you're only reading stuff from people who have a vested interest in trying to inform you their point of view.
So in other words,
which might not be the right point of view.
Question what you're hearing. Don't be afraid to question. Don't be afraid to not just dismiss everything you hear as being a lie, everything,
right,
or from one point of view or another. but listen, digest, think about, ask follow-up questions, and formulate your own opinion, which is probably not going to be here or here on anybody's political spectrum,
Right.
but probably going to be somewhere in between.
Right.
And then we can find common ground and problem solve.
A great example. We can go back to Hat City Blog for just a quick second.
Sure.
The reason why one of the reasons why I created this site 6 years ago was primarily because I went to a meeting, and the mayor of the city of Danbury said that undocumented immigrants are draining city services, and we have to do something about this. This is a big problem.
Yeah.
And I just simply said, I just had two questions. One was to the chief of police. I said, "Has crime gone up or anything due in large part because of undocumented immigrants? Has crime gone up at all?" He said, "No." And then I posed the question to the mayor. I said, "All right, you're saying to me that city services are being drained because of undocumented immigrants. Could you specifically tell me what services are being drained and by how much, so I can go back and verify this, and I can check it out for myself?"
What a concept.
And the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "Well, Danbury Hospital is a perfect example of our city services being drained."
Okay.
And immediately an alarm bell went off in my head. I said, Danbury Hospital has nothing to do with the city of Danbury.
Right.
So based on that moment I had right there, I was like, you know what?
For-profit institution.
I said right there,
Yeah.
this guy is just saying, he's just spewing stuff that's just coming out of his mouth, and nobody's checking him out on what he's saying. Maybe I need to do something about this and keep an eye on this guy.
Yeah.
And that's how Hat City Blog was born.
As you've mentioned in the past many times on this show, there have been other mayors that have done things that were, we'll call them dishonest, and the News Times came down hard on them and exposed them and talked about things they had done and got everything flushed out in the air and facts out and checked and rechecked and counterchecked. Jim Dyer, for example.
Jim Dyer, perfect example.
Who we thought of as being a good mayor, but even good people do bad things. But when they do bad things, they need to be called on it.
And there was a point in the history of the News Times where they had reporters who did beats and went down and covered City Hall. I think the Iroquois era is a perfect example in which they went down. You had reporters whose job was to go every day from sunrise to sunset and just stay in City Hall and find what's going on.
Yeah.
You don't have that stuff right now for a variety of reasons. But again, this just comes back upon what the new media is all about. On a national level, you have an opportunity to look at different sources and research what's being said. On a local level, you do have an opportunity to go to these meetings, but I understand that most people don't have the opportunity to do this stuff. But you do because of services that I provide, or John Newmeller with Danbury Live.
Yep.
You can actually view and attend these meetings and watch these meetings and form an opinion for yourself, because reporters will spin their stuff based upon
A couple of quotes.
Which I just call pure laziness.
Yeah.
I went to school for journalism, and I tell you, if my teacher saw an article that I did based upon a couple of phone calls, it would be awful. So, I mean, again, it's very important on a national level or on a local level to research and just don't take the opinion of a news outlet as fact, because that can lead to very dangerous things.
We've been advised by the waiter that our meal's coming, and we're going to have to.
All right.
We have to trail. When it comes out here, when we see the meal, the menu come across the screen, then we'll know that it's time to cut off. Until then,
where's my French onion soup at? Where's my spoon?
The waiter's taking care of this guy at the next table, and all he does is look over here and say, "Why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about that? Hey, eat your meal, guy. Eat your meal. Stop kibitzing." Well, that's the whole point of the show, I guess, is that the perspective is the audience or people at the next table kibitzing and maybe listening and maybe learning a little something and thinking a little bit.
That's
and
fine.
at that, I hear our meal coming. So we're going to have to say goodnight from Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. Al Robinson, our esteemed guest, hatcityblog.blogspot.com. Thank you, Al.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.